Today we're talking with Eve Krasilnikova, who is part of Incognity Academy, on the topic of how to build a competitive profile and several other topics related to the IB and to international exams. First, I wanted to thank Incognity Academy, and as well, I wanted to thank Eve for giving us a bit of her time and being here. I wanted to talk a little bit about Incognity Academy first. We're an international academy which focuses on providing an integral education system through an array of different services, which aim to amplify the talent and competence of students, revolutionizing and contributing to their goals on the way. More than a service, we look forward to constructing a community in which young people can find opportunities and access to relevant information for their academic and personal development. So let's get things started. About us. Who are we as Incognity Academy? We are a group of young teachers who favor a horizontal relationship with the student. We also offer the development of the session according to the student's needs. We offer flexible schedules according to the students' and teachers' time. And we also offer personalized sessions, classes and consults one by one. So first I wanted to introduce Eve. If you could introduce yourself, Eve, please.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Eve. So I'm originally from Russia and I spent the last 2 years living in Amsterdam doing IB, and I had to write the exams, unfortunately. I'm going to be a prospective student at UCL in less than a month, so I'm really excited for that. Yeah, as you can see, I got 43 points in IB. I worked really hard and I got 7s in my HLs, luckily. I also got an A in my extended essay, which was in world studies, global politics and biology. I also received the honor roll, the highest honor award at my school, which meant that I had a 4.0 GPA for a year. I also received a high school science fair award, and I was the founder and president of the STEM Society at my school. I was also a Tedx speaker and a host.
And the first topic I wanted to talk about was the impact of the IB on your life. We're talking about 4 points in this conversation today. And the first one is the impact of IB on your life. I wanted to ask you, what was your experience with the IB program, and what do you consider were the most important things that you learned from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started the IB, there's a lot of IB has such a big reputation as to being really prestigious and being really rigorous. And so sometimes that can be a little bit overwhelming. Me personally, I think I was a little bit too confident when I first started off. I didn't really get my work ethic to the point where it should have been. So I actually started off doing okay. I was getting 5s in most of my classes, but I was a little bit disappointed because throughout my entire school career, I was doing really well. I was getting really high grades, and all of a sudden I wasn't compared to my previous history. So that was in the first semester, and I wrote my midterm exams, and I just realized I was really dissatisfied, and I think I couldn't cope with the workload in the way that I was trying to study at that current time. And so once I realized that my scores weren't where I thought they should be at, or that I wasn't reaching my full potential, I kind of took learning into my own hands, and I tried to motivate myself more to work harder and to achieve my goals, which was a higher score in most of my classes. So I just started working and I changed my approach. I started talking to my teachers more, communicating with them better. I started asking more questions in class, being more engaged. I started doing a lot more self-directed learning. I think that's really important in IB. You can be engaged in class, but you still have to put in the hours outside of school. And that's something that I think some people really struggle with, especially finding the motivation, because it's a very, very exhaustive process. It takes a lot of effort, and a lot of us aren't used to it. Like, especially in the beginning, you just don't expect it, and you think that you can just go on doing the same thing that you've been doing for your entire high school career or for your middle school career. And I think that's one really important aspect of the IB, is that you do have to mature and you do have to alter your work ethic, and you have to really tune into your personal learning style. I think that was also something that really helped me, and something that I realized I had to do some introspection and think about myself and how I learn best. And at one point I realized that sometimes being in class and being engaged isn't exactly what will help me learn. So I took learning into my own hands, and I started using the methods that would allow me to learn best and would allow me to perform best. And that was a really big change in my life, I think, in general, because for once I had kind of this personal agency and this kind of personal responsibility that I didn't really have before. I kind of expected my teachers to be the ones in charge of teaching me. But the truth is that a lot of it is dependent on you, and a lot of it is dependent on your attitude and how much you really want it and how much you're really willing to work for it. So for me, I started just reading textbooks on my own time, and I dedicated a lot of time to studying. And you have to make sacrifices. That's just how it is, maybe not go to every social gathering that maybe you have the opportunity to go to. But in the end, it's definitely 100% worth it. Hard work 100% pays off. And slowly I started to make a lot of progress. And that to me was really like self-reassuring. And I still didn't reach my goal. My predicted grade was a 37. So I wasn't, my teachers didn't expect me to get that high of a score because obviously of my performance in the first semester. So when I asked them, while I've been improving and I will continue improving, can you please bring my grade up? They said, no, prove us wrong. And so that's what I decided to do. I decided to be like, okay, if you don't want to bring my grade up, that's no problem at all. I will do it myself. And that just made me even more determined to prove them wrong and to get higher grades. And I think that's also something really important, is that you should view people telling you no, and you should view kind of these rejections as redirections and as something to further motivate you and to make you even more determined to achieve your goals, instead of kind of letting it maybe deter you. So I just continued working really hard. And sometimes, I asked during class or where we were reviewing a topic, I would just ask, hey, can I go to the library? But that's my learning style, and that's how I can make the most of the time that we have in class. They would let me sometimes, obviously not all teachers, but some of the teachers let me use the library. That was when things really started to change for me. And that's when I really feel like I reached my full potential in terms of how I was going to perform. And it's also really, if you're struggling, that has no impact on how you will end. The only thing that has impact on your end performance and on your end grade for IB is what you do at the end and how you perform at the end. Obviously it's really important to continue revising throughout the years. That's super helpful for a lot of people. That works really well, but you should not lose hope. If you are not doing as well as you wish you would be doing, no problem. You can still make a change in your work ethic. You can still make a change in your destiny. You just need to take matters into your own hands and kind of reflect on, what can I be doing to impact my learning and improve it. Yeah, it definitely had a big effect, especially with my confidence as well. I kind of realized that in the beginning I was a little bit too confident. So sometimes you have to realize, oh, okay, I'm struggling, and you have to admit it. Sometimes that can be hard for people to admit that they are truly struggling, but you have to communicate that to your teachers, because they are 100% there to help you. Tutors as well. If you need extra help, get it 100%, because that's something that also really helped me. I had a few tutors who really supported me throughout. Once again, it just continued catering to my own learning, because that's all you can really do as an IB student.
Kind of connecting with what you said, I think what's very important in the IB program, as well as when you are studying university, is self-paced studying. How important do you think this is to develop the discipline to just sit and read on your own and research on your own?
Well, one big aspect of becoming an adult, which you're essentially doing during IB, right? Because you end up being around 17 or 18 years old, right? You're almost an adult. One point of that is really getting self-discipline. And you really have to start realizing that a lot of things you have to take control of, right? At university, for example, you're not going to have your professors following you around, making sure that you do your homework. It's very much independent, and it's very much just based on how you do on your exams and how you continue doing your coursework throughout the year. So it's really important to learn that self-discipline when you're already in IB, because once you learn it in IB, it stays with you for life, and you will continue using those skills that you built during IB in your university, and it will be super helpful. Yeah, 100%. Self-discipline is really, really imperative to being successful in IB, because as I said, you need to have personal motivation, and you really need to want it yourself, and you need to take actions in order to achieve your goals. You can't just, sit back in the passenger seat and just expect for things to go smoothly. A lot of it is your own personal initiative that you have to take. And as I said, you have to take sacrifices. You have to make sacrifices, which is exactly what self-discipline is as well. You have to sometimes dedicate a certain amount of hours that you're going to spend doing something, because that's the only way that you can do it. And that's why I think tutors are also really good liaisons, because when you have a tutor, they can also help you be motivated. And my tutors definitely helped me kind of have a more positive outlook on my progress. It was easier to communicate with them because they were more relatable than perhaps my teachers. And your tutors, they're personalized to you, and they're so focused on you that they can really help you just, track your progress, and just to motivate you and to inspire you to continue working hard. And your tutors should be able to know how to cater to your learning style, and how to cater to what will motivate you in order to perform better. And that's what your tutors want. They want the best for you, and they work really hard. So I think that's really important as well to acknowledge. So even if you perhaps won't find, self-discipline immediately yourself, having a liaison like a tutor can also help motivate you, because you schedule sessions with them, and if they assign you work, right, then it's once again additional work that you have to do on top of your classes. Essentially, you should be doing on your own as well, but instead you're doing them with a tutor who holds you a little bit responsible, perhaps, and just motivates you continuously to dedicate more time to your studies and to work on your areas of improvement.
And now I wanted to talk a bit about extracurricular activities and the importance of extracurricular activities on your resume or on the application process to universities. Why do you think extracurricular activities are important, or what is your opinion on them?
So extracurriculars are basically the activities that you do outside of your class. And I think they're really essential, because your extracurriculars really allow you to develop skills that otherwise you wouldn't be able to develop in class. There's so many things that it's just impossible to kind of learn in class, like public speaking, right? In a lot of classes, right? It's just not something that you really learn. And it's not really a skill that you can necessarily develop. But if you join a speech and debate club, or if you join Tedx, you just develop those skills that are really important when you interact with people. And those are really valuable skills that you can learn that also add a lot to your CV. I think in general, extracurriculars are just an opportunity to firstly explore maybe some different career paths, right? So if you were to do internships, or if you were to do join different clubs that are affiliated with certain subjects, or maybe with certain careers, that really helps, because it allows you to explore your kind of favorite career, or like a career path that you've been considering outside of school, and kind of in a more practical setting. I think that's really important, because lots of kids in IB don't really know who they want to become necessarily, and what career they want to have. And extracurriculars are a great opportunity to have to really explore that. And that's why I think the IB also requires CAS, because it's so imperative to, keeping a healthy lifestyle balance and work, study, and just normal life balance in your everyday life, right? So that's why they require you to do creative extracurriculars, active extracurriculars, and services, because it's just really important to developing into the IB learner profile. I would also say that extracurriculars are an opportunity to kind of relax, of course, which is why CAS is so important as well. It takes time off of your studies, which perhaps can exhaust you. And sometimes you need to take time to kind of develop yourself personally, which is why extracurriculars can be really helpful. Also, you can gain more contacts. It's really good for networking. And in general, they're really good to put on your CV, because if you have a very good theme, like if you have certain extracurriculars, create a theme around them. Like, for example, with public speaking, if you want to become a lawyer, right? And you have speech and debate, Tedx, and maybe like theater, drama class, or not drama class, but if you join the play, right, then that kind of has a theme to it. And I think that's also really appealing to both college admissions and when you're trying to get hired for a job. On the other hand, you should also try extracurriculars that complement what you want to study. So for example, even if you're studying, pure engineering, right? Sometimes it can be really appealing to admissions officers or to employers when they see that you did do some public speaking, right? Because it shows that you're well-rounded, just like the IB is. They like to see a holistic view of who you are. And a lot of these activities are really important in kind of allowing the people who would potentially hire you or potentially accept you on their course to really puzzle the pieces together of who you are. But obviously, it's really important to prioritize. You can't do everything in the world, and they like to see commitment as well. So it's better not to just to join a club for a year and then drop it. It's better to stay committed to a club that you've joined. But of course, if you really don't like it, it's better to drop it, because then you can spend your time elsewhere, perhaps developing some other skill. So you really have to tailor it to what you personally find interesting and what will be most helpful to you in your personal journey in the IB and in your career.
Now that we're talking about extracurricular activities and public speaking, I wanted to ask you a bit about your experience as a Tedx speaker.
Yeah, so I gave a TED talk on feminism. And so I kind of talked about the different gender roles and the biases that we have and how subliminal they can be. Eye-opening experience, because it allowed me to tap into one of my own passions, and it kind of allowed me to explore more what I'm interested in. And I think it was also really kind of appealing to a lot of people to hear that this is something that I'm passionate about, because scientists aren't necessarily very passionate about things in politics. So it was kind of a very unique combination that I think made me really appealing to my employers. Also, I was the TEDx host. So I actually managed a conference at my school. That was really fun. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of organization, right? You have a lot of, you develop a lot of communicative skills, because you have to coordinate a lot and you have to talk to a lot of people. So a lot of leadership skills, teamwork, and it definitely taught me a lot. Definitely experienced a lot of obstacles and had to overcome them that I wouldn't have otherwise experienced. But you learn so much from the experience that it's really, really useful in the future as well when you're organizing events or anything in the future. Honestly, with organization, it really taught me a lot, and it was just a wonderful opportunity to have. And obviously, I took the initiative to have that position. I had to apply for it, so I was really happy to receive it. Yeah, it's definitely something I will never forget, hopefully.
Is your talk on the web? Can we watch it online?
Unfortunately, it wasn't, because it was at my school in Ukraine. And unfortunately, at that time, the conference that was held, it wasn't, for some reason, I don't remember why, but it wasn't recorded. And so they ended up having two conferences, and only one of them ended up being published. And unfortunately, I was in the first conference, and so it didn't end up being published. But yeah, I mean, I do obviously have the script for it and the presentation, and there is a video of it, but unfortunately it's not published on the TEDx page.
If you could share that with us, that would be awesome, because your talk seems really interesting.
For sure.
Okay, now let's talk about what we're here for, building a competitive profile. Could you explain a bit about the admission process at UCL, at the college you are applying to, or that you have entered to?
Yeah, absolutely. So for UCAS in general, there's a very specific way that you're supposed to write the personal statement. It's not like in the US where you write a bunch of creative essays that are kind of windows to your soul and kind of pieces of the puzzle of who you are. It's more, it's very structured, the personal statement. And so it's kind of like a formula that you have to get right. And so in order to write a really good personal statement, Essentially what they're trying to see is how interested are you in what you will be potentially studying. That's the main thing that they're looking at. And they're also looking at how qualified are you to actually be studying this potential course, right? And so for that, usually there's like this perfect formula of you have some extracurriculars that are closely related to what you're going to be studying. Another one is that you show personal initiative in the subject. So whether that's watching documentaries, reading books, speaking to people who are in that career path, you have to show some personal engagement with the career that you are looking at. And so mentioning that and kind of reflecting upon it is what they like to see a lot of the time. Furthermore, they like to see how in class you participate in the subjects, and they like to see also personal interest beyond just the class. So, you know, what did you do for your IAs, right, in those subjects? Just writing about that and talking about why you chose those you know, investigations, that can also be a really helpful thing to put on your personal statement. And in general, I think they really appreciated that for me, because I wrote about my internal assessment for math because I did it on the 4-year series of a electrocardiogram, so an ECG graph, which is like the little heartbeat. And so I mathematically modeled it using the 4-year series transform. And I think that they really appreciated that because it kind of did show a relation to medical sciences, which is what I'm going to be studying. And the fact that it was math, you know, you usually don't necessarily associate math with medicine, which is why I think it was a really cool way to demonstrate my love for medical sciences. I also talked about my chemistry IA, which was on the inversion of amines. And that's really crucial to a lot of medicinal chemistry, because when you look at the stereoisomers, they have very different functions, and that's something that's really important when you're developing different medicines and different drugs. So that was also something that I mentioned. And I think in general, they really like to see that you are very like you're very knowledgeable about the subject, and they like to also see your passion, but it shouldn't be written very creatively in the sense that it shouldn't have a lot of embellished language. They like to have a lot of very like just clear cut, concise, you know, you only have 600 words. It's not a lot essentially. To include everything. So you should just really mention the things that are most relevant and are really the strongest aspects of why you would fit so well in this career path. And yeah, apart from that, obviously your grades, your predicted grades are really important. So you should definitely communicate with your teachers as well to try to ensure that your grades are going to be at least, you know, somewhat in the range of the course that you want to study. Whether that takes a little bit of negotiation or not, it depends on the teacher, but some teachers will believe in you, and some teachers will, you know, give you the benefit of the doubt and maybe, you know, be a bit optimistic. Other teachers will be a bit pessimistic. So it's important to really communicate, because that can really be a deciding factor in whether or not you get admitted at a college in the UK. UCL in particular, I think it's like very strong in so many different subjects. So I think in general, whatever subject you're applying for, UCL is a perfect university because it's really amazing in all aspects of education. So yeah, I'd say overall, I think what definitely helped me stand out, I think, was just the fact that I was really passionate about medical sciences and that I did a lot of things outside of school and out of my personal interest. Like I even mentioned the documentary that I watched, and I mentioned several books that I read, and kind of the key aspects of those books and what they taught me and how that relates to what I want to study, which is really important because you have to link kind of what everything that you mention. You can't just bullet point it. You have to say something critical about it. Like, how did it impact you, and how does this relate to the course that you want to study? So it does end up being quite lengthy. It's only 600 words. It's pretty tough.
How important would you consider were your extracurricular activities in your admission process?
So which of my extracurriculars were most important?
Yes, or how important do you think they were for your admission process?
I think for me personally, because I had a lot of initiative in mine, I had a lot of leadership. So I was also the leader of Doctors Without Borders at my school. And that was once again really closely related to what I wanted to study. We raised a lot of funds for them. I was also, as I said previously, the founder and president of the STEM Society and obviously the leader of Tedx. So once again, that showed a lot of initiative, I think, and leadership, which I think they really appreciated because that's a lot of the unique kind of positions, and it really takes a certain person, I think, to start a new club, and I think they really recognize that and they really appreciate it. So if you have the opportunity at your school to start something new, like for example at my school we didn't have enough science activities. We were very heavy on arts and theater and sports. We didn't have anything to do with sciences, so I decided, okay, it's time to make a change. And so I made this club. But it's really important for you to just think about, oh, how can I change my school for the better? And you have to dedicate a lot of time to it, which is also a really important aspect to think about, because you have to delegate your time accordingly. You can't bite off more than you can chew. So it's really important to prioritize what sorts of activities will be most valuable. And the most valuable activities are always the ones that are most closely related to what you are studying. Oh, and I also interned at UCL earlier, at UCLH, which is the UCL hospital. And that was also something that I think was really, really, really helpful, because obviously if I was applying to UCL and I interned at the hospital, I think that was something that definitely made them consider me very competitive as a candidate. So definitely think about internships, because those are kind of the primary source of how you can identify whether or not a career works for you. And same with your admissions coordinator. They're going to be looking at, do you really know what your career is about? And could you really handle it? And if you show that you already have previous experience in it, then it shows that you're really committed and it's clearly an informed decision that you're making, which is something that the UK really wants. They want you to be certain of what you study, because you have one course path and you can't really go off it unless you want to transfer courses. It's not like in the US where you have a liberal arts degree and you can study various subjects at the same time. It's very specific in the UK, which is why they want to see that commitment from you. And yeah, my extracurriculars, 100%, I think were definitely a deciding factor in whether or not I got into UCL, simply because of, my initiative. And I think otherwise I wouldn't really have had much to mention. Yeah.
So I think what's important is to build a profile on the career you want to apply to, be it with extracurricular activities or with or taking IB specific courses. I think everything adds to that, and what's important is to always keep in mind what you're applying to, and how you can take courses, or how you can take additional extracurriculars to build your profile for the career you want to apply to. And finally, I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about some recommendations you could give to people who are about to take the IB or are taking the IB right now. What recommendations would you give to them as an alumni of the IB?
So I think I've already given quite a few tips just throughout with my stories and maybe my experiences. I think that probably the best advice you can give is, don't expect it to be easy, but it's not impossible at all. Everything is doable. Even if you're taking the hardest HL math, course, right, which everyone thinks is impossible, or physics or like a crazy combination, it's never impossible. And you don't have to be a super genius to be able to get a high score at all. All it takes is just a lot of practice, a lot of work. In my first semester for math, I was getting fours. I wasn't doing very well. And I thought, oh, okay, all my life I was good at math and now I'm horrible at it. But the truth was, it was just because I wasn't putting enough work into it. I wasn't doing the homework, which was horrible. And I probably would have ended up with a 4 if I continued on that path, maybe even worse. But at one point, you just need to, have that little wake up call and have like a reality check and really, get your stuff together and just, work really hard and do the practice problems, take advantage of every resource that your teacher gives you, take advantage of every resource that you have on the internet, right? Whether that's tutors, whether that's practice papers, or anything that you can find online. It's always super, super useful. I think what's also really important is to think about how the exam is structured more in advance, because sometimes people only look at the exams in the second year or maybe even in the second semester of the second year. So it's really important to, already think ahead and think about the future. Organization is something that people struggle with a lot. So if you're struggling with organization, keep a planner and just, dedicate some time every day, like 10 minutes to just, keep your planner. Try to keep an organized room. That also helps with motivation. When you have a clean room, you have a clear mind. So it's much easier to study. You don't become as distracted, which is something that I struggled with a lot. I was really distracted a lot of the time. Once again, communicate with your teachers as much as possible. Check what IB courses your dream course requires, like minimum requirements, because I wanted to study biomedical engineering, but because I didn't have physics, I couldn't study biomedical engineering because that was a requirement and I didn't know about it. And I ended up regretting it in the second year. Obviously, everything turned out fine because I'm really happy with my course that I'm at now. And honestly, I think I prefer it over biomedical engineering. But, just think ahead a lot of the time, because nobody's going to be doing this for you. And the decisions that you make now do matter, but it's not the end of the world. They are not set in stone at all. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you so much for the advice. Now we will pass through the QA section. The mic is open for everyone, for anyone that wants to ask Eve questions. If somebody wants to ask questions through the chat, they can also. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Emilio asks, how do you know a specific extracurricular activity is good enough to convince admission examiners?
Okay, how do you know a specific extracurricular activity is good enough to convince admission examiners, perhaps convince them that you are fit for the course, right?
Yeah.
And this is really important. It doesn't actually matter what the extracurricular is. It's as long as you justify it in your personal statement, right? You have to advocate for why it's a good extracurricular and what you learned. So it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not it's good enough, right? It's about how do you communicate? What reflections have you made about your participation in this extracurricular activity? And yeah, it's based on how you justify it. So you have to advocate for why this extracurricular activity was so helpful for you and how it relates to your career, right? So hopefully the extracurriculars that you took, they were closely related to your prospective career. But if they aren't, right, you can still mention things. It's actually good to mention one or two kind of activities that you do that is not closely related to your to what you want to study. Like I mentioned that I volunteered, right? And so then I justified it by saying, oh, me volunteering, it shows like that I kind of have empathy for people, and therefore my mission for why I want to study medical sciences is because I want to help people in the future. So you have to make that connection. You have to spell it out for them. Why does it make sense, and what does it reveal about you? So I think that's something really important. So if you didn't take the correct extracurriculars, it's not the end of the world. You can just say what is most important about them that relates to your career.
Next question, Mel asks the age-old question, how can you stop procrastinating?
Okay, that's a classic question. I think everyone has experienced it. I'm going to be honest. I'm a huge procrastinator. I procrastinated so much, honestly. Like This is really bad advice, but or like a very bad thing to say, but I wrote my extended essay, like it was tough, man. I didn't write it for like an entire month. I was just, letting it pass. And then at one point you just realize you have to write it. And I think one thing that one of my teachers said to me about procrastinating is that like you can continue saying that you will do it together, it's tomorrow, but at one point there won't be a tomorrow. And all of those times that you said, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, you could have spent 5 minutes on that task and you would have probably finished it by the end, instead of having to cram all of that stress and all of that intensity into however long it takes you to finish an assignment, right? So every time, what's a good tip is every time you feel like saying, oh, I'll do this later, right, just work on it for like 5 minutes or like 10 minutes, however long, and then take a break, right? There's this thing called the Pomodoro Method where you like work for 20 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break, work for 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And that helps a lot of people. With a lot of people, it works out really well, because it is true, it's hard to keep focus and it's really easy to procrastinate, especially now with COVID. So just, search up different techniques online as well if you don't like the ones that I suggest, but there's lots out there that you can do to motivate yourself. So yeah, I hope that helped.
Next question, Leia asks, how can we use strategically our time in our extracurricular? And how do I know if one extracurricular is enough or more than enough? I think that question is kind of related to the previous, participate in everything without criteria. So yeah, I think that question is very related to what you told earlier on how do you convince a tutor or an admissions office on whether your extracurricular is enough. But if you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, I think with the first part of the question, or the first question, how can we use strategically our time in an extracurricular, right? It's important to think about this. Like, it's better to commit to one or two really, really good extracurriculars that you spend a lot of time on and that you are like a shining star at, than being a part of a bunch of clubs where you barely participate or where you are barely distinguished. You should really try to commit to a few that you are really passionate about, you are motivated about, because when you go to those extracurriculars, you need to be passionate about it because you're going to be doing it for the next 2 years. So it's really important to kind of stick to one or two. And also, one thing that I kind of regret is that in my 11th grade, in the first year of IB, I did a bunch of clubs that I ended up dropping in the second year. And looking back, they were a little bit pointless. I wasn't necessarily super enthusiastic about doing them. I didn't necessarily want to be a part of them. And then that's why in the second year I dropped them, because I had so much work that I just couldn't sustain it anymore. So it's better to, really commit to one or two, well, not one, but like two or three, where you are really, really doing a lot and where there is, like there's scientific kind of accomplishments that you've made. So like, you can write like how much money you funded for something, or, what you accomplished, like very, very like facts, because they don't like to see something ambiguous. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I contributed a lot to, the food drive. No, you have to say what you contributed in terms of, numbers, in terms of, how long, how much time, that's what they like to see. They like to see concrete facts. They really appreciate that, because otherwise it's a bit ambiguous. So that's some advice that I would 100% give, is just do something that you're really passionate about and spend a lot of time on it, and try to achieve something that can be written on your CV or that can be written on paper.
Okay. Next question. Sandra asks, is it possible to get IB theoretical level on some courses like computer science without actually taking? I think Sandra is referring to, I think we can phrase this question as which resources for the IB or for university level courses would you recommend to someone who is just taking the IB?
Okay, well, for computer science, right? There's lots. You have Code Academy, right? There's just so many, honestly, there's so many resources online, Coursera courses. You can take the Harvard CS50 computer science class, which everyone at Harvard takes in their first year if they're studying computer science. So there's lots of resources online. I think in terms of, any IB subject, what you can do is you can go on Coursera, which is like a website that has a bunch of courses on it, and the courses vary in duration. Some of them are like a week long, some of them are like many weeks long. And there you can learn more about your subject, and there's lots of different levels, and it can really help you. Like there's an introduction to psychology course there. I did a course on medical neuroscience by Duke University on Coursera. That was really fun. So yeah, that's actually a really good question, because there are so many resources online that you can find. I think YouTube also, insane amount of resources. There are so many YouTubers that have tutorials online on specific units, like especially for the sciences, like for math. There's lots of resources on YouTube. For chemistry and biology, also amazing YouTuber teachers who helped a lot. Obviously your tutors, 100%. If you need more like guidance, like specifically about you, tutors can 100% help you with that. And in general, they are very, very useful. Also, another thing is just reading books, right? Like even if you just read not an IB textbook, but just a normal book on computer science or an introduction. There's this series called A Short Introduction, and there's a lot of interesting, stuff that you can learn about your subject as well. There's one in molecular biology, for example. So lots of things online. You just have to know where to find them. I hope that answered your question.
We go to the next question. Emilio asks, what are the qualities a tutor should have, or what qualities do you think are important for a tutor?
Yeah, so personally as a tutor, I think it's really important to be patient. I think it's really important to listen to your student and listen to what they want. I think it's really important to be supportive, to be motivational, right? To always encourage. Whenever there's a mistake, right? Just fix it. Just figure out what the problem is, and just say it's okay. It's totally fine, no problem. Let's just move on and try again until it's fine. And I think what's also really important as a tutor is to communicate well. You need to have open communication on both sides. You have to be on an equal, like you mentioned earlier, that Incognity cares a lot about is, being on a horizontal plane with each other, right? It's not like your tutor's above you. It's not like your tutor's, an authoritative figure, right? Your tutor's your friend. They're there to help you improve, and I think that's really important. You have to have a really good relationship with your tutor. Your tutor has to be friendly. Your tutor has to be prepared to every single lesson. Personally, I like to prepare a lot. I like to give a lot of resources to my students, and I think that's also really important. Yeah, just it's very similar to you coming to class. It's very similar as to being a tutor, because you have to come to class prepared, and you have to be really respectful, and you have to be just open-minded, ready to learn, or in this case, ready to teach. And any questions that you have, you should feel comfortable talking to them and asking them certain questions. I think your tutor has to be really enthusiastic as well, because if your tutor is not enthusiastic about your subject, what's going to make you enthusiastic about it? So your tutor is supposed to be your kind of role model, but like more like a big brother or a big sister figure. So yeah, like I like to get really excited before the presentations that I give during my tutoring sessions, because when you're excited about something, it's very contagious. So yeah, I think that's something that you should look for in a good quality tutor.
One more question from Emilio. How much do you recommend to write articles in scientific magazines as one of the principal extracurriculars? I'm interested in writing articles in Imperial Physics Review, but I'm not sure if that's worth enough. Thanks.
I think that sounds like a great idea. I think that's very unique. I've never heard of that before. That's also really important in your extracurriculars. They should be somewhat unique, because they like to see something that's your own personal initiative. And in this sort of extracurricular, 100%, I see personal initiative. If you're writing articles, once again, that takes so much time and effort, right? If you really do put the time into that and the effort. So I think 100% that could be a great way to show admissions people that you're really interested in it, really interested in physics, right? And especially if you write about, different aspects of physics or like maybe with something specific that you're interested in, you can write articles about maybe something interesting that you've read or about, news in physics or maybe like a review of like a physicist or something like that. I think that could be really cool because it shows that you are actually so interested in it that outside of your IB physics class, you're dedicating time to learning more about physics. And it's also a great way that they can maybe even see, they can go and read, your physics articles. I think that's really cool. I think that's a great way to show. So how much do I recommend to write articles? I would say write one article. This might be ambitious, but write one article a week. Maybe write one article every like 10 days. I think that would be a good time. And your article should probably be around. I had a Russian literature blog, so I can kind of relate, if I'm fully honest. I would say probably spend around like 1 hour or like 1.5 hours writing your article, maybe a bit more depending on how long it is. It should probably be around at least 600 words. I think that's realistic, but probably more. So yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. So good luck with that.
We have one last question. Leia asks, what do you think of the Physics Olympics as the main extracurricular activity? I think that's something worth pointing out. How important do you think participating in Olympics is for your application process?
Yeah, so in Holland we don't have Olympics, but in Russia we do. So I definitely understand this whole Olympics thing. Yeah, it's really impressive. If you do well, I think it's something really impressive, and it's another academic achievement that you can show. For example, if maybe you don't have the best grade for predicted grade for physics, right? But you do amazing on the physics Olympics, I think that compensates, and I think they like that a lot. So definitely sounds like something, once again, that I said is like, it's like a fact. If you do really well in it, right, and you have a certain, score or a certain position that you ended up earning, right, that's something that you can write about. And that's something that showcases concretely, right, not ambiguously, but very concretely, your abilities, your capabilities, and your interest in it. Obviously, it's also very competitive. So that's also a good aspect because it shows that you're willing to compete against others and to kind of engage in this kind of scientific discourse.
Yes, I personally think Olympics are a big part of your application, especially if you are interested in applying to an engineering or a science program. I think that really makes your curriculum or your application stand out. Well, I think that's all for today. Thank you everyone for joining. I want to thank Eve for giving us a bit of her time and being here with us. And I also want to thank Incognity Academy for hosting this talk. Remember that Incognity has the mission to help and support students like you during their final years of high school. We help you during the IB programs, offering counseling on courses, internals, extended and talk essays. We also prepare you for the next big step, university. We offer programs like ACT and counseling to guide you through your admission process. And last but not least, we come with amazing teachers that will help you with whatever needs you have. And most importantly, understand you, as they have also passed through the same process as you. Once again, thank you so much, Eve, for taking some time to talk with us. I want to thank Incognity Academy, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was really fun.